Welcome to Weinbrenner Theological Seminary for those of you that have not been here, and welcome back to all of you that have been. I'm going to invite, I'm Dr. Gregory Guzman. I'm the Vice President of Institutional Advancement here, and I'm going to invite up our President, Dr. Brent Sleesman, to say a prayer before we get things underway. Dr. Sleesman?
Welcome to Weinbrenner. We are about equipping leaders for service in God's kingdom. And so this event is an opportunity for us to hear, listen, be challenged, and enjoy a good meal. And so when that all can happen at one time, it's a great place. So let's go ahead and pray, invite God's blessing, and we'll continue on for today. Father, thank you for the opportunity you've given us for knowledge and the opportunity you've given us for fellowship and the opportunity you've given us for being challenged to grow as we serve within your kingdom. And Father, despite my words a moment ago, it's not that we invite your presence. Father, we acknowledge that you're already here. And we ask that you allow this time to be one of building one another up and allowing us to more fully understand what you are calling us to be and who you are calling us to become within the work of your kingdom. Thank you for those gathered. Father, thank you for the meal that's been provided. And we ask that we'll continue to follow you faithfully as we go through this time together. And we pray this in your name. Amen.
Thank you very much. We're going to get started right away with our discussion. Leadership One brings all of you together so we can discuss current topics, ideas, things that matter in our community and around the world. And we're very lucky today to have with us Dr. Robert Braylock. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him and what we'll be talking about today. Dr. Robert Braylock is a native of Cleveland Heights, Ohio. He came to Findlay in 2007 to study at the University of Findlay. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree and with his doctorate of pharmacy in 2016. During his time as a student, he worked very closely with the Office of Intercultural Student Services, including serving 2 years as a graduate assistant. Dr. Braylock currently serves as the director of the program and practices pharmacy part-time. In his role at the University of Findlay, Dr. Braylock enjoys engaging with students through discussions and programs that encourage them to consider different perspectives and different experiences. He's married to his wife, Jasmine, his companion, and wife by covenant. And they have one very energetic and loving child. Please help me welcome Dr. Braylock.
Thank you, sir. Can you all hear me? Yep, there it goes. Cool. So I am going to immediately inconvenience everyone in this room. How many of you all picked up an article when you checked in? By a show of hands. And I legitimately need to see a show of hands. So please raise your hands high. Because if you don't have an article, it's going to kind of throw things off. All right, for those of you who do not have articles, please immediately, if you guys could go to the front table where you checked in, please grab an article. It's pretty pertinent that you have that. And the rest of you who did get one, you can continue eating. All right, so this is the second part of the inconvenience. Each of you should all now have an article. And so we are going to do a little bit of seat rearranging. And so I'm going to ask you all to group with the people who have the same article as you. I'll read off the articles and just point to tables, and people who have that specific article can fill in at that table. Thank you guys for agreeing to do this and for inconveniencing yourself for me. I appreciate it. So the first one, my mom had to lie to get me into a good school. If you all, those who have that article, if you could meet at this table right here up front. Again, my mom had to lie to get me into a good school. If you have that article, please come to this table up front. The second article, the slow motion unraveling of an immigrant family. If you have that article, could you please come to this table right here? The slow motion unraveling of an immigrant family. So if you have that article, please come to this table right here. The third article, Tear gas for tears, white instruction on black grief. If you could come to this table. Again, tear gas for tears, white instruction on black grief. If you could come to this table. The fourth article, what goes through your mind on nice parties and casual racism.
He gets to stay.
Oh, that works perfectly for Chris. What goes through your mind on nice parties and casual racism? If you could come to this table right here. The fifth article, yes, this is racism. If you could come to this table over here. The fifth article, yes, this is racism. If you could come to this table over here. The sixth article, he needs to listen to us. Protesters call on Trump to respect native sovereignty. If you all could come to this table, if you have that article, he needs to listen to us. Protesters call on Trump to respect native sovereignty. This table right over here. Thank you all, I really appreciate it. Again. The seventh article, black on black racism, the hazards of implicit bias. This table right here, you have it? Black on black racism, the hazards of implicit bias. This table right here. The eighth article, Eric Reed, why Colin Kaepernick and I decided to take a knee. If you all could come to this table right here. Again, Eric Reed, why Colin Kaepernick and I decided to take a knee. If you could come to this table where I'm standing right now. The ninth article, Boston Globe report alleges, I'm going to ask you guys if you could quiet down a little bit just so that people can know where they're supposed to be sitting. Yes, sir. Boston Globe report alleges ESPN has a culture of sexism and sexual misconduct against women. If you all could come to this table right here. Again, Boston Globe report alleges ESPN has a culture of sexism and sexual misconduct against women. If you all could report to this table right here. And last but not least, stop police from killing people or admit that you don't care. Article number 10, if you could come to this table. Again, stop police from killing people or admit that you don't care. This table right here. If you do not have an article, you can go to any table. You can be a freelancer, hey. And feel free to fill in at any table that doesn't appear to be already significantly full, which all of them are, so. Yeah. I think there should only be a maximum of 7 people at each table. So if you have more than 7 people, please somebody sacrifice themselves and go to a table that does not have 7 people. All right, I think we're good now. Thank you so much for doing that. So welcome to the third Beyond the Global Leadership Luncheon. I would like to thank Mrs. Lisa Cross and the team at Weinbrenner for extending this invitation to me to speak at this event. It's truly an honor. I would also like to thank you for being present today, taking part in that minor inconvenience, but that will hopefully contribute to us having a more meaningful conversation, and for supporting this program series. My name is Robert Eugene Braylock. Robert meaning famed, bright, shining. Eugene meaning well-born, and Braylock, my surname. I was named after my late grandfathers, Robert Lee Thomas and Eugene Braylock. I was born to Gregory Braylock and Rhonda Braylock on Friday, January 27th, 1989. My father was born in Detroit, Michigan, raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and spent summers in rural Mississippi. My mom was born and raised in Cleveland. I am a black man, the son of a pharmacist and a school teacher. I was raised in an apostolic holiness church, but attended a Lutheran school from kindergarten through 8th grade. So you could imagine that my Wednesday chapels at school were significantly different than my Friday and Sunday church services. I am a musician, a drummer, a pianist, a vocalist. I am also a healthcare professional and an educator. I am a husband to Jasmine Maria, who is getting our little guy right now, and a father to Derek Jeremiah. I am a child of God and a joint heir with Christ. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Today, with your permission, we will engage in intimate conversations and reflections. We will be encouraged to think critically. During our time together, there may be times when you're uncomfortable and there's some internal conflict that you're having. Please be sure to make a note of this so that you're able to reflect on it later. In order to produce an environment conducive to this level of vulnerability, I would like us to do the following. Number one, recognize and accept that we all have bias. So whether this is something that you're aware of or unconscious bias, we all have bias and preferences for different people, places, and things. Number two, commit to confidentiality. Because of the type of conversations that we're having today, I encourage you all to make sure to not divulge information, especially when it's regarding a specific person or specific comments that they made outside of this space today. Number three, be aware of our body language. So oftentimes, our words can say things, but also our nonverbals can say things as well. And so if somebody is saying something that you don't agree with, I encourage you not to roll your eyes or cross your arms, but to be in a neutral position and listen to their perspective that they're providing. Unless you're cold, that works. Number four, assume that people are coming from a good place. So oftentimes in today's society, people are very blatantly coming from a bad place. And so I hope that doesn't happen today. But at the same level, if somebody does say something that kind of rubs you the wrong way, let's assume that they had good intentions when they made that comment. And last but not least, be respectful of other people's experiences. And so we don't want to seek to minimize people's experiences. I think we can comment on them, but make sure that we're respecting what that person went through or different experiences that they've had. It's also important that we be mindful of our own well-being. And so at any point through our time together, if you are feeling very uncomfortable, I encourage you to step out, to disengage briefly and to kind of gather yourself. And then if you feel that it's appropriate, please do step back in. And also, this conversation will work best if we are fully engaged in it. And so, as I mentioned, there may be topics or conversations that you're uncomfortable having, but I encourage you to be fully engaged and to participate a little bit beyond what you're comfortable with. So with that, I would like us to take the next 5 to 7 minutes to introduce ourselves to the people at our table. Using my introduction as an example, please share about yourself with the members of your group. I will give you guys like a warning probably halfway through. There are still a number of you who haven't gotten around to the introductions, we can extend the time, but you guys can go now. All right, so it sounds like most of us have finished up. Do a 1-minute warning so you can finish up any last comments that you may have. All right, so how did you choose to identify yourself and why? You don't have to raise your hand. You can just talk. Job title. Why is that?
I think the environment we're in, that's just how we felt. I think that's how most of us feel most comfortable discussing ourselves based on our job titles.
In terms of conversion experiences and also vocational background, because others kind of shared those things prior to me, so I was able to share and relate to them based on what they shared, so that kind of directed what I shared.
Geographical, we shared parts of the country we've been in and how we all have some kind of connection to one another.
Married or as a parent. All of the above.
Were there things that you shared that you were hesitant to share abroad? I hear some snickering, so I'm assuming that that's a yes. Don't be ashamed. We are loyal. We are die hard. All my Cleveland Browns fans. But other more significant things that we may have been hesitant to share, but we share it anyway.
I think after first the article we have, the fact that it has to be police officer. After I already said it.
No, that's fair. Thank you for your transparency.
I was hesitant to share that my wife's a wee bit younger than myself, and I was also hesitant to share I'm a first generation U.S. citizen.
Why were you hesitant to share that?
You never know. You never know. I used to watch these days.
One person mentioned that there was a grandchild deceased, and that was very proactive. It was entrusting us, and that's a pretty tender thing. It's a very tender thing.
That vulnerability.
Yeah.
What stood out to you about other people's introductions?
It's a small world. There were actually connections in the past. So that was not expected the first time. I don't know about others at my table, but I took the first person who shared, I took them as the example of how I should share. There's another.
Yeah. Like that's normally how it works. Did you find yourself stereotyping, consciously or unconsciously? Once again, this is a safer space, so I do encourage transparency and sharing things that you might not share outside of spaces like this.
I found myself over here
She found herself more curious. That's hard. And so I will say that the conscious part is before someone speaks, assuming that they are this certain thing based off of previous experiences, what the media tells us, and all of these other sources of information. The unconscious piece, in my opinion, would be if somebody told you something and you were shocked, and then you sat back and wonder why you're shocked, and it's because of the sources that have influenced your perception of that person or people. Look similar to them or identify similarly to them. What were some of the points of pride that you all mentioned? Say it again.
When he shared with his job all of the moves that he had. My husband was military, so you kind of think you're the only ones that have that many moves. Well, in his short life, he's had a lot of moves, and so we kind of connected there that his job isn't anything like his job was, but he moved just as much, and that was a real connect there and an eye-opener that, okay, the military's not the only ones that move a lot.
All right, so I think we found that our identities are pretty complex. While our physical features, such as the color of our skin, the texture of our hair, the shape of our nose, the fullness of our lips, reflect a wide spectrum of the beauty of diversity. Oftentimes, Our negative perception of these beautiful and intentional physical features hinder our discovery of the inner beauty and intricacies within each of us. It's my hope that today we will engage in meaningful conversation and reflection that influences us to better appreciate and advocate for those whose beautiful and complex identities differ from our own. As we progress through our time together, you may hear references to Scripture or Jesus Christ. I am a follower of Christ. While this is my deepest and most meaningful identity, I do recognize that some of us have been hurt and traumatized by people who claim this identity, including people who look like me. While it may not mean much, I acknowledge and apologize for the way that I and my brothers and sisters have harmfully responded to different expressions of humanity throughout history. It may come as a surprise, but those responses do not accurately portray Christ. Jesus Christ stood up for the widow, the orphan, the stranger, the poor, the sick, those who were in prison. Jesus himself was a refugee. I'll repeat that again. Jesus was a refugee. His family fled an oppressive and deadly government in the town of Bethlehem in which he was born to go to Egypt. He and his family were displaced persons who were forced to cross national boundaries and could not return home safely. So this is the Jesus that I know and strive to be like, as he sought justice, love, mercy, and walked humbly with God. And so I say all of this to express that my worldview is modeled after Christ. Now, oftentimes I fail miserably, you can ask my wife, at upholding this, but it is the lens that I strive to look through. And so I recognize that some of us may have different beliefs and worldviews, but I ask that you be open to my perspective during our time together today. So each of you all have articles. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to personally read the article and reflect on it, and then I'll give you further directions after that. So within the 10 articles that were distributed, there were around 5 different topics. So some of you had articles that discussed a little bit about immigration, others education, justice for Native Americans, law enforcement and communities of color, sexism, and then racism and implicit bias. And so because of the diversity of topics, I kind of want to hear how things went, what were some of the dominant themes at each of the tables, and also some of the minority viewpoints that were made, and some of the feelings and thoughts that you guys were having while you were having these discussions. And there doesn't need to be a representative from each table, but you guys can just pop up as you wish.
A lot of the opinions, in order to explain an opinion, a lot of people want to talk about their background and where they come from. That's sort of where the opinion came up.
Can you talk a little bit about what article your table had?
We've got the one about Kaepernick and Eric Reed. And some families had a military connection, some had an international connection, and the background of the family and those connections were part of the opinion.
Do you mind being a little bit more specific? So once again, this is, we do want to facilitate a space that's safer. And so I highly encourage you guys to, like I said, push yourself a little bit beyond that comfort level to share your thoughts and opinions and things like that.
I don't mind at all. I'm what they call a third culture kid. I grew up in a missionary family in India. And so I'm familiar with being a minority from the time I was a little kid. I can remember villagers standing around in a circle around me and pointing fingers and calling me red monkey, which was what I looked like as a white person in the middle of their culture. And so I have that side of me. And then I was also drafted into the Army at the end of college during the Vietnam War. And so I've been a military person. So part of me reacts as a minority person, and part of me reacts as a military person. As a military person, I remember having to stand up and salute the flag
Thank you. So, the majority of y'all did not read this article, but it speaks of Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid, who are two football players who, at the time, were both on the San Francisco 49ers. And so, I think the first preseason game, Colin Kaepernick had chose to sit down on the bench in protest, not against the flag, not against the national anthem, but in protest against his perception and the reality of law enforcement's interaction and relationship with communities of color. And so he ended up speaking with a former NFL player and Green Beret as well. And Colin Kaepernick was talking to him to, just get better insight as to how he should go about it. And so after that conversation, he decided that he would kneel instead of sitting on the bench. And so I think our media has kind of misinterpreted and misconstrued it into Colin Kaepernick and players and athletes protesting the national anthem or protesting the American flag, when in reality, they're protesting injustices. And so I think a lot of people have skewed views based off of that. So that's just further insight into the article that the table had. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
We dealt with officer-involved shootings of unarmed African-American persons. And the first thing we said was we acknowledged that not every officer is a person of violence to this extent, and racist violence. Technology coming our way. Thank you, sister. Okay. So anyway, after acknowledging that not every officer is guilty of this bias against African Americans, we did notice or acknowledge also that some are. And there have been occurrences, like our article, of persons of color who have been stopped by officers and didn't go with, they've lost their lives. And there hasn't been justice in every case for those who have lost their lives. Their families have sought justice and accountability and have not received it. And so we were left wondering at least a couple of things. Number one, how do we prepare children of color to be out pursuing their life's aspirations? How to prepare them when they are stopped by law enforcement officers, and how to help them to keep their lives when they have such encounters. The other point was, how do we engage police officers and systems and departments on the question of anti-racism and alternative uses of force when it comes to everybody, and particularly people of color.
Were there dominant viewpoints that came out, or minority viewpoints that came out of that, or did people seem to have a consensus on things?
We're still learning.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's another thing. We're still learning.
Thank you for your.
It's like over here, they're still learning.
Definitely. Thank you.
So you don't know, I think it would be rather interesting. ET has a series called Both Sides. And I watched it last night. It comes on Tuesday night.
I saw that, Eric Garner.
Yeah. So it's interesting because what they're doing is they're giving both sides. They're giving both sides. So they looked at Eric Garner, and they gave the side of the officers, the side of the family. And I thought it was very interesting because both sides was educating me. I learned some stuff that I was not aware of. And I think it probably would be a benefit to just look at that.
Other tables?
We had the article on the slow motion unraveling of an immigrant family. And so we read the article and found some interesting things that I think everyone can find when they critically read an article. Clearly, it told the side of the family that was being deported seemingly unfairly, and it may be unfairly. But there were details left out about had they've been in the country for 17 years at least, had they tried to get citizenship. So are they truly surprised that they're being deported? Had they made efforts to get citizenship? And that's just an interesting question, because then where's the breakdown? Was it too expensive? Was it too lengthy and they tried? But it never even mentioned that aspect of it. And so we found that the article really didn't have enough information for us to, not that we wanted to make a judgment on it, but again, like in most things, there are probably two sides to this. There's the side of the stability of the nation, or the law of the nation, and then the side of the immigrant family. It doesn't seem like together they came to a good solution. Just from how the family is being presented, it's unhappy for everybody that they're being deported. But I don't feel like we had enough information to make a judgment on how that could have gone better.
And please feel free to chime in when other tables are coming in.
Did another group also have this?
No, just you all. Just you all. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought I came up for no reason there for a moment.
Our article was Stop Police from Killing People or Admit You Don't Care. And it was an article about the death of several black men at the hands of police officers. And we had a lot of different discussion, but I think what's interesting is whether it's media-based, personal-based, we seem to plant our feet firmly on one side. And anytime someone shares the perspective of their side, we just dig in farther. So in transparency, I've always been someone who's supported our police, our law enforcers. It's just been who I am as a person and how I've been brought up. So my first instinct, one of the things that they have on here is every time someone has said, stop killing black people, there's a response. And he listed all of these responses that he heard. And I've actually said some of them, either out loud or in my mind. You know, you see something on the news about someone being killed, and my first thought has been sometimes, well, they have a criminal history, or you don't know if they were going to be violent, or whatever the case is. We have this natural response that I think is garnered a lot by the media, because they like division, they like fear, they feed on fear. And it doesn't really matter what your response is. The fact is someone lost their life, and there's nothing that you can say that makes that okay. There's nothing you could say. So maybe they were felons, maybe they had a history, maybe they dressed different, it doesn't matter. The end result is that someone lost their life. So it was an interesting read, and I think on here there's this part about how he teaches in his classroom to remain calm, how as a black person you would respond to a police officer. And the part that kind of struck me, I have kids, And I have 3 sons. And I guess I'm not, the reason I can, as a white person, tell my kids, you know, you can trust police officers, you can trust law enforcement, is I'm not scared that they're going to be shot. It's not a fear for me, but it is a fear for people. And that is a whole different perspective. To have a son that you're raising that you have to teach differently than what I'm teaching my son, which is trust them, go to them, they will protect you. That's really humbling to understand that someone is telling their 10-year-old, 8-year-old son something very different. So.
Thank you.
Two things. Maybe about 3 times a week I pick up my grandkids from school. And my smallest grandson, he's in kindergarten. So every day when I pick him up, they all go to the same school, but he and this little white girl, they hug and say goodbye, and they wave at each other. He gets in the car, and they just wave and say goodbye. You know, I just think that there's a certain mindset that children have that we interrupt as adults. You know, I just think there's a certain, I mean, they just wave and say bye, and say bye. You know, my oldest grandson, who is 10, his best friend is a white boy. They go, my son-in-law and his dad, and they go out and eat together, and they play games. They can play all these games and talk to each other and play games and do all of that. And I think that's profound, and it has afforded us to have conversations with our kids. That's one side of it. So I'm going to the church one day. I'm going to an office, and I turn off a street and turn onto the street where our church is located. But I noticed before I turned, a police officer was following me. And it's all perception. I've never been locked up. I don't have a record. I've never hurt anybody. And growing up, when I had to fight, it's because I was protecting myself. So I don't have any of that. But can I tell you, when I turned off of the main street onto the street where our congregation is, our church, my office is located, I saw the police turn behind me, and I got nervous. I literally got nervous. I said, okay, now. So I'm driving, and I'm talking to myself, and I'm trying to decide, now, if he pulls me over, okay, I've never had a problem with a police officer, but I'm nervous. And I said, okay, what am I going to do if he pulls me over? And when I got to the stop sign, he was behind me. I kept straight, and he turned. And I was like, whoosh. You know, and I think that's part of the issue, that it's perception. Now, whether that police officer is going to do anything to me, I don't know. You know.
Do you feel fearful that he would hurt you? Because that would be my exact response.
I just don't.
As a middle-aged white woman, I would feel the same way if I saw a police officer behind me.
But
I'd be like, you know, they finally caught me.
Yeah.
So,
but
were you fearful that you would be hurt or unfairly treated?
I didn't know. It was like, okay, what do I do so that And I was just nervous, and I said, well, do I just put my hands out? And do I put my hands up? What do I do? And I just think it's just a matter, again, it just made me nervous. And it goes to, I think, what the young lady says, you never know what a person is feeling in those situations unless you're that person. And I said, Lord, and again, I've got 6 police officers in my church, you know, and 1 detective, you know. So, but I was just nervous. And I said, man, you know, I said, Lord have mercy. So, I mean,
that's what I say too.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. So I guess in summary, there are 3 things that we can do. I think a couple of people have mentioned this, but these are some of the articles that we read have presented different perspectives that we may not have been privy to prior to coming here today. And so I encourage all of us to expand what we're reading, what we're viewing, what we're listening to, and what we're doing. Oftentimes, it's easy for us to consume information that already confirms what we believe, what our perspective is, what our perspectives are, and things of that nature. And so by limiting the information that we're consuming, we have this single-minded perspective. And so I encourage us to expand those, the type of information that we consume so that we can have a more well-rounded perspective and to be more empathetic to people who differ than we do. Privilege is a big thing. And so we all have different types of privilege, whether it's based off of who our parents are, the college that they went to, how much money we make, or whatever. We all have a type of privilege. And so privilege in and of itself isn't bad, but we should use it to help, use it to the benefit of others, but especially populations that have historically been marginalized. And ideally, we'll get to a place where we're willing to relinquish some of that privilege to be able to bring more equality and equity. And then last, be aware and engaged in social justice issues. So once again, it's easy for us to stay focused on what's immediately in front of us, what's happening within our friend circle and our family and friends. But it's important as people to care about things that don't necessarily involve us. And so there are tons of things that are constantly going on in the world. And so I don't petition you all to be involved in everything, but care about something. Don't be apathetic. Don't be so consumed with what's going on in your life that you forget that there are massive systems of oppression that have been taking place and that have been present and are still present and prevalent within our country. We can look at the Indian Removal Act of 1830 that forcibly relocated Native Americans, also known as the Trail of Tears. But just last year, we had the Dakota Access Pipeline. And so for the entire birth or the entire time that our country has been in existence, we've consistently and systematically, it hasn't just been like random things, like laws have been put in place to systematically oppress our Native American brothers and sisters. And so how do we as citizens continue to just live without even acknowledging those things? And so like I said, I encourage us to be engaged and aware of different social justice issues and to engage in them at some level. On your table, you have what's called the Social Will Change. Thank you, Crystal, for getting me hip to this. But this is a resource through Minnesota Campus Compact, and it talks about a lot of different ways that we can help to bring about change. So I thank you all for your time. Hopefully you found this to be beneficial, thought-provoking, and I encourage you all to go out and be the change that you wish to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause? Thank you, Robert. And thank you all for coming. We have a couple giveaways before you go. I'd also like to inform you about our Pathway to Ministry program. Today we learned a lot about ourselves, about those around us, and I think what it all comes back down to is our own theological perspective. And that's what we do here at seminary. We teach individuals to find themselves through the Lord. Pathway to Ministry will be held Saturday, February 10th here at Weinbrenner Theological Seminary, and the event is to begin at 9 a.m. and it'll conclude with a lunch at noon. To register, just give us a call here. Also, if you are a clergy member, we're offering Clergy Tax Assistance Day, and that's going to be Tuesday, February 20th. If you have interest, please, again, contact us or see any of us with the silver badges on. Lastly, our giveaways. We have a first book called Reconciling All Things, and the winner is, sorry, I have new glasses. This is actually my first day ever wearing them with bifocals, so work with me. Kathy Braun. Kathy, congratulations. And our second book, Just Courage by Gary Hogan, was won by Lori Turno, Women's Resource Center. Congratulations. Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again.